Sean Miller and the Xavier Musketeers hand the first loss to the UConn Huskies. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Slasher U. I'm your host, Christian Rao, here with my co-host, Steve Feck. We are going to break down Xavier handing UConn, the number 2 team in the country, their first loss of the year. Yeah, what a way to ring in 2023. Well, you're not undefeated, UConn. Sorry to say that, but they lose by 10, 83-73. And again, we talked about this with Sean Miller. He's coming back as the new coach, as the former coach at one point of Xavier, returns to the Musketeers and finds a way to get them ranked pretty quickly. Steve, we were talking off the air here before we got started, and we're pretty surprised how quickly that has happened.
Yeah, it didn't surprise me that the rebuild would not take a long time. And you hate to say rebuild because it's not like Xavier's program was in the dumps, but it's like watching a different program. And again, there's a lot of new talent out there now. But I mean, Sean Miller knows how to coach, and he knows how to coach against Big East opponents. You know, again, sure, he was out in Arizona for all that time, but I mean, ultimately, he cut his teeth playing against Eastern powers, and I think he's just adjusted and adapted right back in. And you got to remember that Xavier leads the nation in assists per game. Now, again, UConn had more assists in this game than Xavier did, but when you watch them play, you can see that Sean Miller touch in that on how they distribute the ball. They're patient, even though it looks like they might be forcing passes sometimes. It's right on the money. The players know where they're going to be. So I think that's going to become problematic for a lot of the more elite or more talked about teams, I think, in the Big East here as they play up against them. Plus, they shot 57% from the field.
Yeah, they're doing really good shooting, and they haven't lost a game since Thanksgiving to Gonzaga. I think it was around Thanksgiving time. This team is really impressive right now, and they go into Big East play, probably the hottest team in the conference. And I know UConn is really obviously doing some good things, but I think Xavier's got the nod here, especially after getting the win by 10. It was not just like a sneaky win. It was a very impressive win against the Huskies team, who is also doing really good this year. I think also doing better than a lot of people expected. I think there was a lot of question marks in this Big East, at least for us. I think we're so far not doing too well with our predictions. We thought Creighton was going to be the top notch. I think a lot of people did too, right? So I don't think we're the only ones on that boat. We're not sinking alone. However, I think Xavier and UConn, I think those are the 2 teams we're going to keep talking about. And it'll be interesting to see if we see another game at the end of the month when they face off again, where each of them haven't lost since that last game against Xavier and UConn.
Yeah, with Sanogo, I mean, immediately, I mean, he's just a presence, and he's going to be a problem against whoever UConn plays against. And I think a lot of focus always goes on that. But there's a reason that this Huskies basketball team is like an analytics darling, because they're so good at just about every aspect of the game, whether it be the inside game, shooting around the perimeter, distributing the basketball, forcing turnovers. They're a good defensive team. So you can see why, like Ken Palm ratings, I think Connecticut is certainly in the top 5 or top 8, I think, in almost every major category for Ken Palm. And you can see that why. So Connecticut's not going to go away. Connecticut has had it figured out. And I know that their coach, Danny Hurley, got a lot of abuse for the technical that he drew. Now, again, when you have that kind of disparity in foul calls, your head coach is going to get upset. I don't care who you are. It could be St. Francis of Assisi coming down from heaven. He's going to be upset because his team is not getting the calls that the opponent is. But you want that kind of fire. You want that intensity. He shows emotions without getting emotional. Players sometimes get too emotional, and this was a pretty physical game too. But Hurley, he's playing the referees now because come tournament time, he wants them to know, hey, look, I see how you're calling this, and I'm not going to stand for that, as the season goes on into the tournament. So I think Hurley's is almost like a secret weapon there for UConn. And, I thought Andre Jackson had a great game as well. He's not afraid to take the big shot. I mean, his percentages weren't great. I think he was 4 for 12, but he had 10 rebounds as well. I mean, I thought he had a great game here too. So the Big East is not going to be the top 2 or 3, and then some middling teams, and then the bottom. It looks. I think there's going to be some bottom dwellers that are going to stay there most of the year. But I think, from top to, let's say, middle, let's say 1 through 8, 1 through 9, I think that's a lot closer now than we thought about when we were doing our Big East preview.
Yeah, I'm with you. First of all, I agree with you about Jackson. I thought he had a great game. He's only a couple assists from a triple-double, and I'm looking forward to seeing more out of him. I think UConn has a really good squad. And again, just because they lost this game by 10 doesn't mean that they are not a top 5 team in the country. This team is really good still. Okay, let's keep that in mind. This team just got their first loss. They almost went the full year, without getting it. They took them until New Year's Eve to get their first loss. Very, very, very big point. But you're right about this Big East. I did not think that this was going to be as deep of a conference this year. I really didn't. I thought this could potentially be one of those off years for the Big East because of what we saw with the departure at Villanova, what we saw with maybe Xavier making a slow bring in, what would happen with Creighton. Maybe Creighton will just run the table. It's just not happening the way that we expect it to. And I'm so happy that it's not exactly, because that would make this job so dang boring. It gives us something to talk about. We have so much to talk about. I just wrote on a piece of paper Big East with a whole bunch of exclamation points, because we are going to dig deep into this conference in the next month, because I feel like a lot of the storylines that are going to happen in the month of January are going to surround the Big East, because there are so many great teams. We're just talking about 2 of them here with Xavier, with UConn. I didn't even bring up a team like Creighton and Villanova, who are struggling right now. And struggling, when I mean struggling in the way that they should be performing, right? I haven't even talked about Providence, who's also still undefeated in the Big East and is looking very good. I think they are, even though Ken Pom doesn't like them, I think Providence is a team that is going to be very sneaky good all season long when we get into these January, February games. I mean, we're just getting started, and that's the best part. We're like in the meat and potatoes of the season right now. This is the perfect time to really dig into it. And the Big East is one of those conferences that if you really like college basketball, this is where you get your hands dirty.
Well, yeah, again, like for me, being a New York metropolitan area guy, a kid from Jersey, I lived in Pittsburgh when Pitt was still in the Big East before they made the mistake of going to the ACC.
It is.
Big East was what I watched, ate and breathed. There's a player that I meant to mention when we were talking about Xavier, so I'm going to take a step back here a little bit, and that's Jack Nunge. He's gotten more and more comfortable and more minutes since he's come in over from Iowa. I mean, that was a big loss for Iowa to lose him, but I was wondering what Miller was going to do with him, and I think they just let him find his level there for a while, and he had a really, really good game. He had 15 points in 25 minutes. I think they're going to work him into an increased workload, I think, going on. And that's going to help Fremantle. I think it's going to help the team in general. We have not seen the best of Xavier yet, as well as they played against UConn. And don't judge that loss to Xavier for UConn as saying, oh, well, they just were a pre-conference, darling. They're not going to get there. No, they're good. Again, I'm not a big analytics guy, but when you watch them play, you see why people that use analytics and try to apply them to a team performance, you see why UConn is a favorite of all these analytics people, because they just do everything well. Maybe nothing elite other than Sonogo as a player, but as a team, they do just about everything well, and that bodes well for them as the season goes on.
Speaking of UConn and Providence, they face off on Wednesday at Providence, and we know that stadium is just absolutely electric there. That one's on Fox Sports 1 at 8:30. That's going to be a great game in the middle of the week to pay attention to. Looking forward to that one. Definitely going to have you covered here for sure on our thoughts on that one, because I do think that has a lot of implications early in the Big East. And I think this is just a good start of what we're seeing. We're seeing teams ranked in the Big East right now, and the only 2 teams that are ranked are UConn and Xavier. I didn't have that on my bingo card for January.
No
way whatsoever. As for Xavier, they take on Villanova on Saturday. They got a little bit of a break, so that should be a good game as well. Villanova's struggling; they're 7-7, but you can never count out a team as good as a blue blood like them. And then they face Creighton, another team struggling. So Xavier has the opportunity to really kind of go through a struggling gauntlet, if you will. The teams, two teams that have big chips on their shoulders. Those are always tough games to play. So keep that in mind when you're getting through. Let us know your thoughts in the comment description below. Between UConn and Xavier, do you believe both those teams were going to be the teams that were ranked in the Big East when we had the beginning of the new year? I didn't see that happening. I thought we were going to see some other teams like Creighton. Let us know your thoughts in the comment description below. And thank you for watching Slasher U.